Welcome everyone. I'm Nick Zumbrun from NIRSA Headquarters. Thank you for joining NIRSA's Summer of Learning, presented by Life Fitness. Today we have Darrell Fedchak from Clayton State University, who will be presenting Beyond the Books, Why Outdoor Recreation is an Essential Part of the Academic Experience. Before I turn it over to our presenter, we'd like to thank Life Fitness for helping NIRSA bring Summer of Learning to you. And now I'd like to welcome Darrell Fedchak.
So just to give you a quick background, I started my outdoor career in 1997 by starting out at a day camp when I was 14. And from day one, I was completely hooked. And I knew that this was going to be a career path for me that took me down, hopefully, the rest of my life. Just from that first day, getting back and being completely exhausted from playing in the sun and playing in the water and just sharing the outdoors with all the kids, I knew that that was something that was going to shape who I was. And because of that, it pushed me to really pick a college based on environment. I did what every college kid did, and I figured out what programs I wanted, and then I searched for the schools. But then when I had my 4 or 5 schools that I was looking at, when I did those college visits, I was looking at not so much the program, but what type of environment beyond just the campus. You know, where was it situated in the world? And because of that, I ended up here. And what you're looking at is the shoreline of SUNY Oswego in Oswego, New York, on Lake Ontario. And this is a place called Flat Rocks. And this is about 100 feet down from the freshman dorm. You can walk out the back door and down a flight of stairs, and you're here. And on that campus tour, I broke away because a lot of the tour guides and the students that I was talking to kept mentioning Flat Rocks, and I wanted to go find it. About 2 minutes down here, I knew that this was going to be the school that I went to, and this is the reason that I wanted to go. You could go at any given day, you know, good or even, you know, not so great weather, as long as it wasn't storming, and you could hang out down on this beach and get a lot of space and a lot of time to really unwind from your day. Indeed, the first night on campus, I found myself being a little anxious, didn't know anybody yet. And I wandered down onto Flat Rocks, and I found 5, 6, maybe 7 campfires that were dotting the shoreline. And I wandered up to one and introduced myself, and I made some friends that night. And that was just a really good way for me to start off my social part of my academic experience. It was really cool. But another thing that happened with this is just sitting down by the water calmed me down. It helped me focus. At the time, I knew that if I had a bad day, I could go down and I'd feel better sitting by the lake. There were trees along the back. If you turn 180 from what this picture is, there's a huge forest there where you can go and you can sit and hike through a little bit. Or I could watch the waves and I could watch the sunset, you know, and I could even just get lost in my thoughts by skipping rocks, you know, things that would really help me refocus my brain and really start to work through whatever issues I was working through. And I understood that this did work, but I didn't understand why or how until my junior year. Now, like most college students, I'm going to tell you my junior year was my hardest one. And that was the year that I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And as I started to work through some things with a therapist, I realized that it had been weeks since I'd made time to go down to Flat Rocks and just relax. And almost at the same time that I was thinking that in the therapy session, my therapist said, recommended that I stick with spending time in places that made me feel better. So I immediately knew what I had to do. The view you're looking at right now, this is what got me through undergrad. And it's unfortunate that my case isn't unique. Mental and physical illness is common among college students, and this is where outdoor recreation can really start to help with the academic experience. So as you can see, mental illness among college students, this is from the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And one of the things they don't actually have on here is that 75% of lifetime cases of mental health conditions, those begin by age 24. 1 in 4 adults aged 18 to 24 will have a diagnosable mental illness. Of the students they polled, over 80% said that they felt overwhelmed by their responsibilities as a student and actually as an adult. Because as we know, the academic experience is not strictly academics. There are other things, other factors that we have to take into account. Anxiety and depression are on the rise, and if you look at a lot of the more recent studies, suicide is the second leading cause of death among college students. This is a problem, and this is something that we need to use outdoor recreation to really meet our students where they are and help them through a lot of these issues. So you have to ask ourselves, where exactly do these issues come from? Where is this stress? Why are these students having these issues? So what I did on my campus was I polled about 200 students, and I came up with a couple of common themes. The first one was coursework. And a lot of students, I'm 20 minutes south of Atlanta. Most of my students come from inner city Atlanta schools, and they're not used to the difference between high school and college work. It's a complete shock to them. The level, the speed with which they have to get things done, the level that professors expect, those papers and projects to be done at, the amount of time they have to spend working with others, and all the stresses that come with that sort of coursework. Those are the things that a lot of my students mentioned very first. The second thing that they came up with were relationships. Now, we're talking not just romantic relationships, but between roommates. I have a lot of students that suddenly, they've gone from having their own room at home to now sharing a room with 1, 2, or even 3 roommates, and that's stressful. They're navigating those interpersonal romantic relationships, but they're also looking at things like their work peers, their bosses, their RAs, their hall directors, their professors, their, the people who work in staff and student activities and things like that, the officers in their clubs. All of those are interrelated because all of those relationships play a role in their everyday life. Now, sometimes those relationships are the things you can lean on that get you through. Those relationships are not always negative, but they do always cause a little bit of work. And that in itself will cause some stress. The third thing I found that students sort of mentioned, but I had to kind of dig a little deeper, was screen time. And this is especially since COVID has really come in. And what we're seeing now is that you cannot possibly do the academic experience correctly if you're not using a screen. No one's writing papers by hand anymore. You're using a laptop. You're using your phone to connect with team members and to check email, you're using it for social media. All of these things have little tiny bits of stressors that add up over time, especially if you're using your phone to get notifications about things. I don't think there's any single person that could tell you that their phone never goes off. It's always constantly beeping, especially since quarantine and social distancing has come up, and we're using more things like Zoom or Microsoft Teams or all those different video sharing things that we need to get regular work and regular classwork done. But all of those things cause stress, and stress is what is causing anxiety and depression to go up. So we need to figure out how to deal with those stressors, and it helps to understand exactly what they do. Those stressors cause us to get distracted. Those executive functions in our brain, the decision-making part of our brain, where we have empathy, where we're able to do critical thinking, that frontal lobe of our brains, that's getting tired. It's becoming exhausted. And we need to figure out how to deal with that. Because what ends up being the result? Students end up on a cycle I would hazard to guess all of us know too well. Late nights, bad sleep, poor eating habits, and the idea that stress begets more stress, because if you don't deal with it, it just gets worse. Not only that, but that stress can cause physical illness as well, both acute and chronic. It can develop everything from increased susceptibility to cold and flu to major heart, lung, and digestive issues. So we really need to get into what we can do to help our students deal with these things so that they can get their full academic experience. They can get the social aspect of joining clubs, they're successful in their academics, and then by the time they graduate, they've had a successful academic experience. So what can the outdoors do? What are the mental benefits? Well, first, let's look at some executive functioning. We have to understand that that frontal part of our brain does more than just exist. You know, this is where we plan and prioritize. This is where we have all that organization of keeping track of our daily lives. These are the places that we have our emotional control. If we don't regulate these properly, this is where issues come in. And we can use the outdoors. The great thing is that you can use the outdoors as to kind of level the playing field. So how can we do that? Well, first, just getting outside for 20 to 30 minutes a day can reduce your mental fatigue. This allows your brain to switch off, to normalize, to equal out. I can't tell you how many times I've led hikes just around my campus. We have a little paved loop, and then we have a dirt track as well. And I can't tell you how many times I've led hikes around these areas where I challenge the students to either leave your phone in my office or give it to me, I'll put it in my backpack, or just don't touch it. You know, just don't even think about what's going on your phone, but put it away and see how much different you feel after 20 minutes. And invariably, every time I have students come up to me and say, oh my gosh, I was so stressed out about such and such, but now I'm kind of thinking through it. And it just, you know, we were on that hike and it just suddenly clicked. Every single time that happens. And it constantly amazes the students that this is something that works. Those 20 to 30 minutes spent outside can reduce your stress by reducing your cortisol levels. Cortisol is the hormone that is that stress hormone. And by increasing your time outside, you can actually reduce your cortisol levels by up to 50%. That's hugely significant and something that our students desperately need to help them fight that anxiety and depression that they might be starting to feel. Just by reducing your cortisol levels and getting outside, you can help mitigate the effects of anxiety and depression if you already have it. But you can also help prevent it from becoming an issue if you don't already experience those things. There's not been a single time that I've led an outdoor hike or an activity where I didn't have at least 2 or 3 students coming up to me afterwards saying, oh, I feel so much better. How do I always get this? And sometimes you have to ask because they don't always volunteer that information. But if you do ask, you're going to find that that's the case. If you're familiar with what a runner's high is the effect created by the release of endorphins due to exercise. You can get it. You don't have to be a runner to get it. Anybody who exercises regularly will tell you that this happens. But any sort of light to moderate exercise for 20 to 30 minutes outside, when you combine that with natural light and some other things that we're going to explore in a minute, you can achieve that runner's high, which can help alleviate your mood. The 3 things that I want to talk about for mood elevation are natural light, forest bathing, and negative ions. All 3 of these can improve your mood and help your self-esteem. There are physical benefits to these as well. So let's start with that natural light. Exposure to natural light, it will help your vitamin D levels go up. Sunlight is the best and most abundant source we have of the hormone vitamin D. You can get it other places, but honestly, just going outside for a few minutes will and letting yourself bathe in that sunlight, that's why we call it sunbathing, really helps you decrease your risk for cancer, heart disease, stroke, and diabetes. But it can also help you alleviate some of that stress just by feeling the sunlight on your skin. Exposing yourself to natural light can also help reset your circadian rhythm so you get better sleep. Restoring a normal sleep rhythm and make sure you're getting enough REM sleep. And this is something that college students do not get enough of. As we all know, we've been there with the late nights and cramming and making sure that we're hitting those deadlines. A normal sleep pattern is critical to mental and physical health. By resetting that circadian rhythm, we can actually start to alleviate some of that stress, and you recharge that frontal lobe, that decision-making part of your brain. So things really start to ramp up in that way, just by getting a little bit of sunlight and fresh air. Natural light can also, natural light and fresh air can actually reduce inflammation. And it's been shown that a natural environment, trees, lakes, something more that we refer to as green space and think of when we say green space, as opposed to just walking down the street in a city or a town, can actually reduce inflammation by up to 50% more. This is especially great for digestive issues, which is something that is also on the rise for college students. As anybody who exercises will tell you, Any sort of light to moderate exercise, 20 to 30 minutes every day or every other day, can help lower blood pressure and reduce your risk of heart disease or stroke. Now, as you can see on the graphic, it says just 1 3-hour hike per week is sufficient. And we don't always get a chance to have a 3-hour window to hike. Even as an outdoor coordinator and living outside, I don't always have that chance. But what I found, and what I found in some of my research, is that a 30-minute walk at lunch can replicate that sort of those sort of benefits that you get in the area of reducing your heart attack risk. Now, all of that has to do with exercise, endorphins, and sunlight. But one of the other things I mentioned was forest bathing, rather. And if you look at the last one, we can boost our immune system by doing something called forest bathing. Now, forest bathing is really cool. All this was developed in Japan back in the 80s. And what would happen is Japanese doctors would prescribe forest bathing as a therapy for their patients. They'd send them into the forest and they challenge them to just connect with the forest through their existing 5 senses. Don't take music, don't take a book, don't just go for a hike, but to really envelop and really notice the forest around you. See what you can hear, what you can taste, what you can feel. What can you smell? All of those things, just using your basic 5 senses, immerse yourself in the forest and find out what it can do for you. And what they were noticing, even as far back as the 80s, was that they were getting crazy results with their patients coming back and reporting improvements. Now, they knew it worked, but they didn't know exactly why. So research has been started, and after 30 years, we've started to really get some idea of why this works. And one person that I want to highlight, Dr. Chin Lee from the Nippon School of Medicine. He's an associate professor at the Nippon School of Medicine. Decided that he wanted to find out exactly what was going on. And his research showed that trees give off these things called phytoncides. Now, phytoncides, for the naturalists in the room, these are the things that trees can use as a natural defense against predators, bugs, things like that. But when it comes to how they affect people, I want you to think of it a little more like aromatherapy. We can't see these, we can't feel them, but we can feel their effects. By bathing in these phytoncides, they have a marked effect on the human immune system. They not only elevate our mood, but they actually boost our NK cells. NK cells are natural killer cells. These are your cancer-fighting cells. These are the things that seek out the bad stuff in your system. They are the fighter jets. They are the ones that you want to have be boosted here. And some of Dr. Lee's research showed that a 3-day camping trip boosted NK cells by up to 56% in participants. And that effect lasted for over 30 days after they got back from the trip. So it was something that just kept going over time. So let's go back to Flat Rocks for a minute, because I love this picture because it has all three. It has that natural light, the sunlight we were talking about. It has the trees for the phytoncides and the forest bathing, but also has the third one I mentioned, which is negative ions. And you get those from breaking water. They're created naturally when water breaks. Breaking water happens with rain, with waves, with waterfalls. You can actually recreate it in your house. It's pretty cool. But breaking water and these negative ions have been shown to elevate mood when we come into contact with them. Again, you can't feel them, you can't see them, but you can feel their effect. And one of the ways that you may or may not have known, if you ever walked into a doctor's office or a spa or a dentist's office and they had a fountain in the foyer there, right when you first come in, maybe have some soft music playing. The whole purpose of that is to set you in a calmer mood. By having those negative ions being produced by that breaking water, that calms your mood and improves your well-being. It can actually be used like natural light. It can be used to alleviate the symptoms of chronic non-seasonal depression and of seasonal affective disorder. If you want to recreate this effect in your house, so what's really happening here is it increases your serotonin levels, which provides stress relief. And if you want to recreate this in your house, all you have to do is take a shower. It doesn't matter if it's hot or cold. The water breaking against your skin will help reproduce this effect. If you ever had a really tough day and jumped in the shower, really start to take note of how you feel when you get out, because I guarantee you your mood will elevate a little bit. Okay, so that's the science. So what do we do? How do we bring this back to our students? And what does this really mean for their academic experience? Because, we're talking a lot about mental and physical health. Well, in order to bring these benefits to our students, first you have to understand your resources. Not every campus has a lake. Not every campus even has trees. But every single campus, even the online ones, can utilize green space. It's as easy as telling students to go outside and get sunlight. What you need to do in order to really help this with your own campus is identify the areas around you that students have access to. Maybe there's a state park or a little recreational area close to you that you can utilize. You can create a program that will help that will allow you to help students get there if they don't have their own transportation. If you have an outdoor rec program already, guess what? You're already doing it. This is what outdoor programs do. And our whole job is to get students outside and really helping them find the appeal of what those benefits can be. Their academic experience, their grades, their overall well-being, if we can get them outside and experiencing these healthy benefits, is going to improve. So once you understand your resources, you have to get your students out there. And honestly, this is probably the hardest step. If we go into demographics, like I said, my campus is 20 minutes south of Atlanta. Most of my students are inner city Atlanta kids, and they've never been outside. If you recall a few minutes ago, I mentioned that study of 200 students. I asked them something else too. One of the other things that I wanted to know was how often they spent more than 20 minutes outside. And I was completely shocked by the answers. I found out that students on my campus are spending 87% of their time indoors. Now, if you want to count time in cars, that's a further 6%. So 93% of their lives are spent inside, and they're only counting 7% as outside. I went a little further and pulled a few dozen of those people as they were doing the survey to find out exactly what they were doing outside. Those students told me that they were counting time walking to and from their dorm or their car, and that was it. 7% of time outdoors, and all they're saying is, oh, I'm just going from building to building. I'm going from my car to my lecture. That's it. That's all. Students will not go outside if you just say, oh, hey, this is available for you. No, they have to understand the benefits to it. And once they do, they will seek out those opportunities. So what you have to do is create spaces and then get students involved in using them. This is going to involve creating your own little team of influencers. Once you get a student or two that really understands this, have them use word of mouth, have them bring a friend, have those friends bring friends, spread it out that way. Because honestly, I do flyers, I advertise on social media, I do PSA videos on Instagram, and yeah, those all get hits and likes, but my numbers didn't go up until I found student influencers. Students want people who look like them to be doing that activity before they commit to doing it, and that's hugely critical. It's also something to understand that you need to meet students where they are. One of the things we did on our campus was we started a finals focus program, which the entire week before finals week and the week of finals week, we offered nothing but different recreational experiences to help them relax. And we build it as, hey, look, you need to blow off some steam, you need a break from studying, come do this activity. One of the things that we did was we partnered with our Counseling Services Center to create something called Hammock and Hang. We established several different areas around campus where there are hooks to hang up a hammock. And then we advertise that there are hammocks to rent for free from Outdoor Adventure. All they have to do is come by and sign one out with their student ID. That's it. And then what I did is I went out and got some students and said, hey, you want to rent a hammock for the weekend? You want to rent a hammock for the day? Do you mind if we share your picture on instant media? Will you share it with all your friends? We can do. We offered prizes and things like that too for hammock selfies and that, and started really getting some students involved in just taking advantage of relaxing out in the natural world. We also offered, since we're in conjunction with the counseling center, we also offered that when those students signed up, they were able to take they were able to get the information for the counseling center if they wanted it. It was handed out to everybody equally, so protecting confidentiality there, but they were given the info for the counseling center, so that if they wanted to make an appointment to meet at the hammock, they could, to get different counseling in different spaces. And what we did is we made sure that if a counselor contacted me back and said, "Oh, hey, I'm meeting a student," they never told me who, but if I'm meeting a student at hammock area A, please don't schedule anybody else. Okay, great. I could take that off, and I would make sure that we have other people. And we very rarely run into problems with that. Another thing we started doing was creating more social opportunities through the use of what we call First Friday campfires. I started doing campfires just as something fun, exposing kids to the idea that, hey, check it out, we're gonna make s'mores, or we're gonna cook over this fire. And what I got was, this was so new to so many students, they loved it. So I started partnering with the Fraternity Sorority Council, with the Campus Events Council, with a bunch of the different student government organizations, and saying, hey guys, let's do a First Friday out back behind the Student Activity Center. We'll get a couple big fires going. I'll provide all the s'more stuff. You guys bring all your info, and we'll use it to get students involved in campus a little more. And this is, as we know, involvement is a huge part of the academic experience. This has been wildly successful, and I now have student organizations that are creating their own campfire spaces in conjunction with Outdoor Adventure, so that they can use our fire pits and do it within within fire code and all that. So what else can you do? It's not just about social issues. It's not just about making sure that we create those spaces for them to do, but let's start creating a program. One thing you can look at is moving your exercise and recreation programs outdoors. I worked with our yoga and cycling program instructors to create outdoor spaces for those classes to happen. Now, yes, weather dependent, but it's very easy to, when you come to the Student Activity Center for a yoga class, to have the instructor meet everybody out front and say, hey, we're gonna be outside in the quad today. We're gonna be outside in the amphitheater today. We're gonna be outside, doing this thing that you love, but also getting that added benefit of being outside, soaking up that sunlight, getting that fresh air, bathing in those phytoncides, and really getting a lot of that natural benefit to it. One thing I did find with this, though, if you do this, make sure you train your instructors in the basic science behind it. They don't need to know everything about, the breaking ions and things like that, but they do need to be able to pass on what the benefits are to their students, and they do need to work that into their instruction. Hey guys, we're outside today. What I want you to do is, while we're doing this yoga pose, really feel the sunlight on your face and tell me how you feel afterward. And then also train those instructors to encourage their participants to go out and spread that message to get more participants. Word of mouth advertising is, at least on our campus, it is still the best way to get more participants going. As I said, we started creating social opportunities by collaborating. One of the things I always ran into when I first started here was students who would come up to me and say, I didn't know we had an outdoor program. Despite all of that advertising, I still had people telling me that. So now what I do is I work with housing, I work with orientation, and I work with counseling, and I work with several other programs, but these are the big three, to create programs specifically for those students that collaborates. Typically what we do is we split costs, we split advertising, and we allow students to not only come to our programs, but to create their own. And what we found is that a lot of these social issues that people feeling a little left out, or people that just have trouble connecting, all of these things can be alleviated just by creating these social opportunities on the college campus. Everything from campfires, like I said, the First Friday campfires and their own campfire things, to I've had several organizations and even sports teams come to me and organize camping events as a bonding thing, so that freshmen who are new to the team, to the organization, can feel like they're part of the group. And all of that, I feel, just contributes to that mental and emotional and physical health that we're striving so hard to get through our students. Finally, if you have an outdoor rec program, consider changing it up slightly. We added solo reflection time to hikes. Sometimes that is solo hiking. And sometimes that is, okay, guys, we're going to take 10 minutes and I want everybody to find your spot and just reflect on, maybe I give them a facilitation question, or maybe I just say, what I want you to do is figure out, think about the things that are stressing you out and then try and let them go. Sometimes we lead meditation, but here's the things that we always do. We always encourage them to turn off their music, turn off their phone, and allow themselves to fully immerse in nature. Not everything needs to be an adventure. Sometimes it's just about relaxing and recharging. And this is one of the places that we've seen a lot of growth in our rec program, and a lot of the positive comments coming back from our students. One of the things we like to say is you should sit in nature for 20 minutes a day, unless you're busy, and then you should sit for an hour. It's a little bit of an old Zen saying there, but it's exactly right. If you're busy, then you have more stress, and the more stress you have, the longer you need to spend outside to help yourself deal with it. And this is how we can really support our students. This is why this outdoor recreation is such a vital part of the academic experience, because without that outlet, without us being able to meet them where they are and help them deal with those mental and physical illnesses that they might be starting to develop, without us really helping them and supporting them in their stress relief, they're going to drop out, and then they're not going to have an academic experience to have. So I just want to say thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out the NIRSA Summer of Learning, the Connect community, to continue this conversation and any of the other great presentations that we have. If you're interested in contacting me, if you want some help with creating your outdoor rec programs, if you have any questions, if you'd like a list of sources, I would have included it, but it's way too long. You can contact me through email or phone. My info is right there. Thanks for watching, and hope you enjoy the rest of NIRSA Summer of Learning.
This concludes our program today. Big thank you to Darrell for presenting, and thank you all for attending. Please visit the Summer of Learning page for the schedule of upcoming webinars. Thanks, everyone.